You started a career. For some reason, you were convinced that you have to stay in that career for the rest of your life. Now you're in a career and it's not suiting your needs. What do? Is it okay to transfer to do something else? I think it is. We got to get rid of this societal stereotype of staying in one job for the rest of your life and be able to grow into something else until you find the right spot. And today I've got Heather Parady, who's a storytelling whisperer, guru, and content strategist. And she's here to discuss with me because, her background is originally therapist and photographer. I'm originally an engineer. And we're both now doing something completely different outside of our quote unquote fields. And I just want to talk about that. I think it's great that we can do this. What do you think, Heather? Or
Yeah.
welcome back.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and it's easier said than done. I mean, I don't know your experience, but for me, when I transitioned the first big move out of, being a therapist to just starting something online and building what I've built, there was so much shame, honestly. There was a lot of
Mhm.
fear. I was embarrassed. I was scared. I mean, it sounds, cute, and everybody I think can nod their head like, yeah, yeah, you can change. But actually doing it is not hot. It is not a
Yeah.
fun. I don't know. Did you have the same experience as me?
Yeah. I really used, okay, the fear definitely makes sense. The shame and the embarrassment, I never really realized that was happening because,
Mm,
4 years of university, 25 years doing this work, and then abandoning it,
exactly.
um, embarrassed to the fact that I'm an idiot, I might be in the wrong career, or I did,
Hmm.
wasted my last time of year, or embarrassed that I'm making this shift. And the shame, yeah, I felt a lot of shame giving up on something that I decided was going to be. But that's a personal rule I created that doesn't make sense to me anymore, but I'm still trying to abide by it, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, you said something really good before we hit record about who is the person that you're letting down. I think that's a really interesting thought because if no one were looking, we all have those cups. If no one were looking, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
If no one were looking, it's not the issue. You know what I mean? Like we would go do what we feel called and led to do, but there's like this perception, other people's eyeballs on us, and it's usually a false perception. But what do they think? Am I going to let them down? Am I stupid? Am I irresponsible? Are they going to take me seriously? Do I still have people's respect? You know what I'm saying? So, um, I completely lost my train of thought.
Whose story or who are you
Yeah, who
trying
are
to
you
say
letting
yes to?
down?
Yeah,
Who
who
are
are
you
you
letting
letting
down?
down?
Who
We
are you letting
believe
down?
it's us. We believe it's us, but I think in actual fact is some trauma or incident that happened or someone in the past you're trying to impress, and then you've been
Mm,
living that for so long that you just convinced yourself that it's your rule, or you just ended up creating that rule. Okay, I'll go on
mhm.
my example. If I stop being an engineer, I could potentially upset, well, it was upsetting me, but I'm thinking what I'm realizing is I was upsetting my parents and everyone around me that supported me. They
Yeah.
go in. Now you're no longer an engineer. Well, is it because that I, I can't make much more money? I don't think that's the fact. Or is it that they can no longer brag that they have a son as an engineer? Or now it's going to be, oh, he used to be an engineer and decided to go help people,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, because with Brandy Keeks there, we're talking about how we create a lot of personal rules that we got to abide by. Like if I commit to do it, I'm going to do it no matter what, even if it's proven that it's a waste of time, but I got to do it. But that's not an Andre thing. That was me trying a rule. I really worked hard in the past to impress certain people, and that's the only way I could do it. And it just became a habit.
Hmm. Yeah. Have you done any like inner child stuff?
IFS, yeah, I'm working a lot with is it internal family system?
Yeah,
The
I'm really
exile,
new
the
into
manager,
that.
firefighter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just started reading and learning a little bit about that, and it's like freaking blowing my mind of like all this subconscious stuff that, what's really weird? One of my biggest fears, and it still is answering people's question, what do you do? I've
Mm-hmm.
always had like insecurity around that because I want it to sound successful versus sometimes when I say it, it doesn't seem as serious. or successful.
Or
So
as
that's been really
popular, or as popular.
100%. Like,
Yeah.
oh, they're not going to take you seriously, you know?
Yeah.
So that's been hard for me for the dinner party thing. Not that I go to any dinner parties, but
Yeah. Well, the internal family system is huge. Like for me, because I realized little Andre was a naked 5-year-old boy on stage with its light on, only on me in a dark room, everyone laughing, and me looking at two doors. One
Mm,
is the situation, my life at the time, and an open field where I can run and play.
mm,
And it's actually so, and it's that kid that's always been out there to protect me. So a lot of my behavioral, my emotional dysregulation, once little Andre is triggered, that's what came out. That kid was there to protect me from all
right,
this stuff from the
right,
past.
right.
Right. So that's the firefighter going crazy, or the manager not controlling things as much. Or sometimes the manager creates too many rules to protect you. And then you've got certain tendencies that, goes into causes depression, anxiety, or even borderline personality disorder type traits.
Yeah.
And then getting that understanding that it's not you, you're not the problem. You're not the one at fault. So that's where a lot of that is. And I think that's tied off a lot to the fear, shame, and embarrassment. Like when you went, what was the order? Therapist, photographer? Because you did photography for a while too, right?
I started the business while in undergrad. And so I was going through school while I ran that business. And I mean, it was pretty full time. I had shoots constantly. Um, so I went through grad school, then gave up therapy, and I was still doing photography. I think photography lasted the longest, and I still
Mm-hmm.
sometimes itch to pick it up, but I know it's not what I'm supposed to do right now. But it came into play, you know what I mean? Like, wow, the content that I'm making, if I didn't know how to use a freaking camera, Lord Jesus.
Well, that's the thing. You gotta, there's a certain eye. Like my wife's, I call her semi-professional. She tried the professional thing for a while and she prefers it as a hobby. She's really good at it and understands,
Yeah.
but she always had an eye. Like I call her the artist because she can take a picture of, I could take the same picture of what she took a picture and it mine has no story to it or there's
Yep.
no
Yep.
element to it. And with your content, that's what I see. You know how to use the camera, you know how to
Mhm.
the thing, and that takes a special eye with the experience.
Yeah.
And with your therapist, were you an active therapist?
This is what happened. So, got my license, went to 3 job interviews, got 2 job offers, bawled my eyes out. Just like, and Brian was like, people don't cry when they get job offers. And I'm like, I just don't want to do it. But it made no sense. It was like a dream job that what
Oh,
they were giving me. Um, but I felt in my gut, this is not what you're supposed to do. So I, no lie, sent an email, rejected them within 15, 20 minutes. I got an email from someone, this random human said, "Hey, Heather, I know you're into podcasting. I had just started my podcast. Can you help me edit mine?" Total stranger. And I'm like, there's a client. And I didn't know really anything about podcast editing, but I freaking figured it out. And
mhm.
so I think it was like the universe giving me a crumb. Now, is that what I wanted to be? Was a podcast editor? No, but it got my foot in the door, building relationships, freelancing, starting to build a brand, having my time quote quote free at home. It laid the groundwork.
Yeah, just don't want to do it, man. That hit me. That's where I am at. Like you got it right at the beginning. I kind of got it a lot later in my
Yeah.
career for the engineer. I just don't want to do it anymore. Now, the thing is, I don't want to do it
In this way.
in this way. Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
way of putting it. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially the visionary type entrepreneurs, are going to get to the point where, once you figured it all out, there's not much more to grow from. For me, anyways, I've had enough. I got to do something else to grow
Yeah.
and try something different. And yeah, I just don't want to do it this way anymore. That's a great add on.
This was a good reframe for me because I, for years, would say, I feel like I wasted my degree. I wasted my training. I
Yeah,
wasted the
exactly.
thousands of
Yeah, yeah.
dollars. And I'm like, why don't you give yourself permission to say that your gift, your education, what you were trained on took a different form than most people? Just
Hmm.
because you're not an LPC with a office that talk to people. I spend every single day on Zoom calls with entrepreneurs, and we talk deep and we go and we get very, very personal, and all those skills are brought back in, So I'm still operating in my gift. It just took a different form than most of the world.
Yeah, I really like that. It's taken a different form, and I believe that. So, like with your training, your therapist training, how you
Mhm.
interact with your clients,
Mhm.
how you create your content,
Correct. All that.
that's a study of human behavior, right?
So valuable.
Yeah.
So valuable.
And I'm just glad you're doing it for good, not for bad.
Yeah.
And then with your photography background and your artistic eye helps you with your videos
Right.
and your content creating. But it's not just the visual, I don't think. Yeah, it's helping is how you're delivering the message and as well. And yeah, it's just really cool that you just had that random call say, hey, you're a bigger expert than me, so can you help me? And but
It was so
that's the fun
weird.
thing about entrepreneurialism. That's what happens. You
Exactly
just
what
need to
happens. But
know
you
a little
have to
more.
jump first.
Yeah,
But you
good
usually have
point.
to like, yep, yep.
Yeah, and then for me is with my engineering background, I am I'm a problem solver, plain and simple. So I just have an analytical way of looking at problems, and I'm helping a lot of people with their own behavior. I've always been a student of human behavior since I was a little child, observing family and
Mm.
how people reacted and why. And I, a lot of my learning is based on observation and analyzing those rather than book learning about it. But I'm starting to do a lot more now. And
Cool.
so when I'm working with people, either to solve their ADHD challenges or with business, or I'm really big on helping people identify their strengths and talents and making sure they work in them. The way I ask questions, interview people, I can see things that are missing and then figure out how to get the solution. It's not necessarily I'll figure it out for them, but at least they can go in the right direction or find the right people. So me jumping from the engineering to tactical breakthroughs with the impulsive thinker, I'm problem solving. So I'm still using my engineering skill,
Right.
just in a different way. I don't know if I'm losing people on this, but I got a better example. Like my wife, she started Rosie's Kitchen, gluten-free, egg-free, dairy-free bakery, right? She's making a lot of baking goods with no real ingredients. She gets
Wow.
offended by that. But she went to school for molecular biology. She's a scientist. She researched
Oh.
cancer for a while, right? And she got some flack from her side of the family for wasting her degree. But how
Mm.
she figured out to mix the ingredients to not have
Come
rice
on.
flour and for the stuff to last more than a day and be able to be frozen and whatever, that's the science degree. That's the chemical composition. She understands how it all works. So she was, like you said, is transferring the experience into a different form.
Yeah. So that, this all goes back to then where's our resistance? Why are we so freaked out to change and adjust and grow? Again, it goes back, I think, to that perception piece. Are we able to fully let go of what other people, well, I'm gonna say fully. I don't think it ever is fully gone. There's a healthy level to it, but let go that death grip of
Mm-hmm.
how we're perceived.
And that's a tough one to do.
Hmm.
Do you think that's going to get better with time, or is that just always going to be a human challenge? Is how we're always perceived and changing our true selves to conform or to be part of a community, even if we
There's
know
an
it's not going
element
to be
that's
good or
good.
not?
There's an
Huh?
element that's good. We don't want to get rid of all of it. There's a survival evolutionary thing there. So, I mean, it makes sense. What's harmful is when we apply it to things that don't really matter, and especially to a point where it starts robbing us of our calling.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've experienced it. I've experienced too, where it's like you have to make a decision. Am I doing this for me or am I doing this for something else? Because if we're doing it for us, we would probably quit a freaking long ass time ago because it is effing hard, like building personal brand, doing some of this stuff. It's not fun and sexy or recording stuff when you could be laying on the couch. You know what I mean? So I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in God and calling and so forth. So for me, it's like almost impossible to be able to step on the gas without it being attached to some bigger mission.
And these changes, do you think you'll be able to do it again down the road? Because I think a lot of us get comfortable where we're at to a certain degree.
I
Maybe
mean,
it's
I just
money.
went through a recent change and this has been scary as hell. You know what I mean? Yeah. Am I going to be able to do it again? You better freaking believe it. Like, I
Hmm.
have to. God willing, I'm able to. But yeah, I just went through another one. There's always these micro changes, you know?
Oh, micro change is not massive change.
Yeah,
Maybe that's the big difference. Micro changes are easier to deal with than the massive or macro.
for sure. For
Wow.
sure.
Wow. Yeah, and I think the calling part is, the one thing I'm getting very frustrated with lately, school systems saying, we need to get the kids to figure out their passion and their
Mm,
purpose,
mm,
and that's what they need to learn. But honestly, we can't learn that without experiencing life
mm.
or experiencing things you don't enjoy.
That's true.
Um,
So
and
experimenting, yeah.
so, like for me, the big question is, well, if you didn't do engineering, what would you have done? I don't know, because I was almost brainwashed to be an engineer from
Oh,
childhood.
wow. Interesting.
So it just, luckily, it was fun. It was kind of suiting my ADHD tendencies of problem solving, consulting, where just something changed all the time. But I don't know what I would do. And I stopped and I gave up trying, because in the end, I'm here now. Um, Maybe I would have done the same thing, but maybe different. But 25, I'm almost 25 years in this career, and we're in a lifespan, we're in a time now that we can actually have two full careers. Like when we were
Totally.
kids, 65, you were dead. You were retiring, and then a year later, you're dead. Like that was how it
Yeah.
was. And you only had one career, but now we're like, we still have another, I'm almost
Oh,
50. I still have another 60 years, right? There's another career there. And we have that ability, but that fear to shift is tough. I'm still not struggling. I'm still thinking a lot about that shame embarrassment part for that transition, because that's a powerful thing, and I don't think people are realizing. They feel a fear, but I don't think they realize there's shame and embarrassment in there as well.
there
That
was
would
for
really
me.
complicate. And that would really complicate the whole decision as well.
Yeah. I mean, there was for me. I don't know if that's everyone's experience, but I got down to the root of it. You know, I was married and had a kid, and my family sacrificed for me to go through. So we paid out of pocket. We lived in this tiny little apartment, to be able to pay out of pocket and not get in
Hmm.
debt. And so there was like a lot of sacrifices there. Brian would come home from work and he would stay with Lucy while I studied till 2 a.m. And so it wasn't just my decision. It was like, I'm affecting my family here. I'm almost saying, and this is all just my own narrative, it's not
Hmm.
true, but everything that you did was a freaking waste of time because I'm not going to do this. Never mind, 2
Oh,
years.
because of the other people's sacrifice. Now you're comparing yourself to someone else again.
That's
Right.
where like the shame and embarrassment and a lot of that stuff came in. Because I'm not 20, I can't just go eat ramen on the floor and make all these sacrifices. It affects other people's lives. I've really had to come to terms with, and imperfectly, I mean, we have this conversation still constantly of the most important thing is for us to be lit up about what we're doing, and trading in a title for a state has been really important for me to understand with transitions that we're like, oh my God, I'm not, you know, I'm transitioning, my calling, yeah, is to be an engineer. No, your calling is to be freaking lit up and use your gifts in the way
Yeah.
that's serving right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think, and then it's still I think it's still a disease of society where all these rules, if you committed to do that, you must stay there,
Right.
or you're getting within a circle of a certain circle of people, and the only way to be there is if you're that. And I think we're still lacking the availability to be individuals
Mm-hmm.
and to make change. And I think that's a lot of stuff that I've been fighting. I know I've been fighting a few other people, and in the end, if I'm not fun to be around. If I'm doing engineering work, I can't stand,
Yeah.
or dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather be right now. I just want to create content and get it out there, but I don't have the time, as much time as I would like to spend on it. And and be a lot more intentional. I don't want to be too intentional because it removes the impulsivity side of it. But just to go out there and figure out how to do things differently and just share my experience that, I think, man, it's still scary. I got two kids at home. They're about to go to school, like college, university, still have a mortgage. It's very
Yeah.
easy money in the engineering right now, but I lost the passion. I think if you lose the passion, I think you got to start relooking at what you're doing. How, like,
Right.
if
Right.
you don't want to do it this way anymore, then how do you change it, or what do you do next?
Here's a fun idea. I have a friend who is a stand-up comedian, content creator, and an engineer.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and the way that he reframes it, because, the comedy is not full time. You can't, not necessarily yet. I believe it will be one day, but he's still having to work his job. And so the way that he's reframed it in his mind is that he's searching for tension in the work, because the tension creates interesting stories and jokes and content for him. And so he goes into it like a kind of research mode of like, here, I'm going to go work this job that I don't like or whatever, and note down all the things that frustrate him, that are moments of tension, right? Because that's where a lot of cool creativity comes from.
You just gave me a lot of ideas now for my next bunch of reels.
There you go.
But it's so true. And
Hmm.
if we flip it the other way, the entrepreneur normally does that for the client. If they
Yeah.
understand the client's tension,
Right.
they could come up with solutions or an ability to help them. But for me, I seem to neglect that tension on myself. Just take it and do it. It's just,
Yep.
you got
Yep.
to get it done.
Yep.
Now you're
Boom.
saying to pay attention to it.
Pay attention to it, because the most interesting stuff normally come from, we talked in the last episode about moments of change. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? So there's usually like a friction point, like there was a problem and then there was a solution. You don't necessarily have solutions throughout your day when you're working a job you don't like, but you can definitely know a lot of problems. And those are little sparks of ideas. So again, it's better to just be able to go full time into what you do, but that's not most people's experience. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you got me thinking a lot here. Appreciate this. This is because I know I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think a lot of your clients are doing the same thing, right? They're transitioning from their old traditional job
Yeah.
into
Yep.
something of
Yep.
impact. Um, like we're definitely a couple of generations apart here, but my Gen X, we've been raised to, you know, who cares if you don't like the work? Just do it. That's what you're supposed to do. Why are you going to do what you like? That's not going to make you money, or it's just silly. We're almost
Right.
to the point where we're told don't chase your passions or your purpose.
Right.
Just
Right.
get a good job and work and shut up.
Right. Yeah. And here's an interesting thought too, to add something else here. But when you're building something, when it's new, and it's in its infancy, putting a lot of adult pressure on something that's an infant will suffocate the life out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people are transitioning from like a well-paying job into something kind of more creative or the side gig or whatever, they immediately need that thing to start making the kind of revenue that this job did. And so what ends up happening is they suck the life out of it because
Mm-hmm.
there's pressure. So it's honestly a gift when you can hold space for both and be able to play and explore and breathe life into a side project. So when it's come to maturity and ready for that adult pressure, you can make that transition.
I think that is a great point and statement to end on right there. Start small to make the transition. Don't go all in and the
Don't take
massive
the
shit.
life out of it. Don't suck the life out of
That
it.
that's a good point. It would suck the life out of it because there's a lot more at risk, and it gets a little more complicated, like you said earlier about, you got more people involved. You got your kids, you got your
Yep.
spouse, you've got staff. Even if you got staff,
Yep.
and if, I think most listeners here care about their staff, so that'll be a big burden on them. And identify the tensions in work. That's a great source of creativity and sources of content creating. And I'm going to pay attention to that. And just don't want to do it this way anymore. If you're thinking that, listener, start thinking about a side project or chasing it. I think we're both giving you permission to chase that if it sounds like that's what you want to make an impact on and there's a purpose. And Heather, like these are right off the bang, right out the hop, bang, transition. There's fear, shame, and embarrassment. And it's going to happen, and reframe it. It's has to be a lot about you too, not all about everyone else. You got to take in there too. So thank you very much, Heather. This is a fantastic conversation. I appreciate your time.
Loved being on. Thank you so much for having me.
Where can people find you? Because you got a lot of good stuff out there.
Heather Parady. You can pretty much Google it and click on something that works for you.
And you're big on Instagram, right?
Yeah, that's my favorite platform, even though I know you don't like it. You're not even on there, but
oh, it's just one more thing to worry about.
I know. I'm just playing with you. I think I'm the one who told you to get off of Instagram. I'm like, if you don't like it, just get rid of it.
Well, you said to pick one to start and then worry about something later. But yeah. I just it's a complicated. Anyways, I'm not going to go down that road right now. But anyways, for you listeners, transition is necessary. If you no longer want to do what you've been doing now, it's okay to transition to something else that makes more sense to you and you get the passion and energized.
That's right.
Like earlier today, Heather started talking about storytelling. She lit up. That's the stuff she's doing, and that's what we're after. So to you, the listener, are you in a transitional period in your entrepreneurial journey, or do you foresee yourself having a transition down the road? I'd love to hear from you. If you can send me an email at andre@theimpulsivethinker.com, be greatly appreciated. Heather, thanks again.
Thank you. This was awesome.
And to you, the listeners, thanks again for listening with me, or thanks for learning with me and listening. I appreciate it. Have a good day.